In this lecture, we're going to discuss the principles of design. So let's first begin with a term that I use often, that is composition. A composition consists of multiple parts that are combined on a surface to create a whole. And these parts are the elements that we have just gone through. We've discussed point, line, shape, value, texture, and we're about to discuss color. The principles of design are terms that are used to describe a composition. That is, they are terms that can be used to describe the way that the elements are arranged on our page. These are the principles of design that we'll be looking at today. Let's start off with balance. Balance creates a sense of equilibrium amongst all the compositional units. Weight and gravity. These are the inclination of shapes to float or sink, the relative importance of an element, or the way I like to think about it, it is where our eyes get stuck. Areas that have more visual weight tend to attract our eyes. So these are areas with more detail, areas with more value, areas with more contrast or more vibrance. The piece on the right carries a lot of visual weight in the upper right corner. That corner is populated with a lot of detail in all of the writing samples and the weight of this black cloud behind them. There are three types of balance that we're going to look at today: symmetrical, approximately symmetrical, and asymmetrical balance. Symmetrical balance can communicate calmness or stability, and it can be mirrored over either axis, the horizontal or vertical axis. It's very common in architecture, so we have an image of the Taj Mahal demonstrating symmetrical balance. Here is an image of the White House, also demonstrating symmetrical balance. Here is a piece by Damien Hirst. It is called The Holy Place. It is actually comprised of real butterflies and gloss on a canvas. The name The Holy Place is appropriate not just because this form represents or resembles a stained glass window, but also because symmetry is found often in religious artwork. Let's look at approximate symmetry. This is when similar imagery is on either side of the central axis. Approximate symmetry tends to pull the viewer in as they attempt to discern the differences in a seemingly symmetrical design. So they'll get pulled in trying to figure out, how are these two sides different? In this case, we're looking at a Wayne Thiebaud painting. Not all of the gumballs are the same on each machine. They are more or less symmetrical. The one thing that changes the symmetry a little bit is the light coming from the upper left or the side left and creating shadows on the right side of each of the gumball machines. Even though the gumball machine is a relatively mundane object, the way that it's placed in the center of the page gives it a cultural icon status, just like in a religious piece where the person of most importance is put in the center. This attempt to elevate the everyday is really effective because of the way it's laid out. It's as if the gumball machine has achieved the status of an icon. Ed Ruscha's Lion in Oil is again another great example of approximate symmetry in a two-dimensional design. In the context of symmetrical balance, we should mention radial balance, in which the images are mirrored on both the vertical and horizontal axis. All right, let's look at asymmetrical balance. The principles of visual balance will help guide you as you try to create balanced compositions that are asymmetrical. So, a larger form is heavier and more attention-getting than a smaller form. That makes sense. Your eyes are more likely to get stuck on a larger form. But you can balance it out by putting a few different or multiple small forms on the other side of the composition. A form gathers visual weight as it nears the edge of a picture, so a small form that is near the edge can balance a larger form near the center. A complex form is heavier than a simple form. Our eyes are more likely drawn to a more complex form, a more detailed form. So a small complex form can balance a larger simple form. color balance, something we'll get into in our next unit. Warm colors tend to advance towards the viewer. So in this case, the warm color is the red, and it appears to be popping out of the page. Cool colors like this blue recede and sort of seem to fall away from the viewer. The warmer of two temperatures will be visually heavier because it seems closer to the viewer. So a large cool shape like this blue oval can balance a smaller warm shape. Intense colors are heavier than weak or pale colors, tints or shades. This is a tint of blue because white has been added. So a larger, dull, or weak shape can balance a smaller, intensely colored shape. A single, small, bright blue form near the center can balance a large, pale blue form near an edge. And this is because the intensity of this color has more weight, while the location and size of this oval has more weight. So between the two of them, they can balance out. Okay, so let's look at the last one here. The intensity or weight of any color increases as the background color approaches its complementary hue. So red and green are complementary colors. Therefore, on a green background, a small red form can balance a really large, complex blue form. Regardless of the principle, most artists rely on their sensitivity to what looks right. Most people have an intuitive sense of what looks balanced. Here are a few examples of paintings that use asymmetrical balance. There are a lot of principles of visual balance working here. Christ and Mary have larger faces that are balanced out by the three small faces in the background. The bright colors in Mary's dress balance the bright area in the sky. Despite the fact that most of the action is happening down here with Mary and Christ, there's enough going on in terms of faces and color and contrast in the background to keep your eyes from getting stuck in this area. I really like this painting. It's an Edward Hopper theater painting. It's likely that the first thing you'll notice are all of the faces on the right. The faces are small and detailed, and they are balanced out by the large blue and rather dull curtain on the left. There's a little bit of narrative balance going on here too, because once you start looking at this large blue shape, you may start to wonder what's happening behind that curtain. Is the drama behind the curtain more interesting than what's happening in the audience?